history of television comedy, one of the most iconic sitcoms that comes to mind is the hit show Three's Company.
For 8 seasons, Three's Company was America's favorite escape, a world of harmless mix-ups and side-splitting physical comedy. The thing nobody tells you is that the biggest mix-up wasn't on screen. A battle was raging behind the scenes, culminating in a single, career-ending moment that the network tried to bury.
Mr. Suzanne, did they ever think of canceling the show after when Suzanne had left the show?
Why are all the men getting 10 times more than me? Or any of the women on television?
This wasn't just a salary dispute. It was a Hollywood war that got personal, pitting friend against friend and changing television forever. That one unaired scene is precisely what doomed the show, and the details are absolutely shocking. Come and knock on our door. The show premiered in March of 1977, and it wasn't just a hit. It was a cultural explosion. Within a few seasons, it rocketed into the top 10 Nielsen ratings and stayed there, a place of honor it held for almost its entire run. At its peak, over 20 million households tuned in every single week. To put it mildly, America was obsessed. The reason was simple: the chemistry. John Ritter, playing the clumsy but lovable Jack Tripper, was a genius of physical comedy. Many people are crazy about his talent, and for good reason. He could trip over a sofa, get tangled in a telephone cord, or misunderstand a simple conversation in a way that left audiences in stitches. Ritter wasn't just acting. He was a walking, talking cartoon of hilarious misfortune. Then you had the women. Joyce DeWitt played Janet Wood, the smart, grounded, and often exasperated brunette who acted as the trio's anchor. She was the voice of reason in a sea of madness. And then there was Chrissy Snow, played by Suzanne Somers. Chrissy was the bubbly, naive blonde whose innocent misunderstandings often launched the show's most ridiculous plots. Somers played her with a perfect blend of charm and comedic timing that made her an instant fan favorite and a pop culture icon. Together, they weren't just roommates. They felt like a real, albeit dysfunctional family. The most shocking fact is that this perfect formula was actually borrowed. The show was an adaptation of a British sitcom called Man About the House. But the American producers, Don Nichol, Michael Ross, and Bernard West, tailored it perfectly for audiences in the United States, creating something that felt entirely new and fresh. The humor was built on a foundation of farce, a style full of slammed doors, overheard conversations, and wild assumptions. Each episode was a tightly wound machine of misunderstandings that would build and build until it exploded in a finale of laughter. What many overlooked at the time was how the show subtly pushed cultural boundaries. By featuring a co-ed living arrangement and having its lead male character pretend to be gay, Three's Company was tiptoeing around subjects that were still considered taboo on primetime television. It did so with such a light touch and so much humor that it normalized these ideas for a massive audience without ever feeling preachy. And you can see this everywhere in the show's legacy. It paved the way for future sitcoms to explore more complex social situations. But not all things are what they seem. Behind the scenes of this perfectly happy television family, a storm was gathering, fueled by fame, money, and ambition. The laughter that echoed through millions of living rooms was hiding a growing tension that was about to cause the show's perfect foundation to crack. The illusion of harmony was about to be shattered by one single demand: the contract that broke a trio. By 1980, Three's Company was at the absolute zenith of its power. It was the #1 comedy in America, and its stars were household names. Suzanne Somers, in particular, had become a breakout sensation. Her portrayal of Chrissy Snow had made her one of the most recognizable faces on the planet. But the thing nobody tells you is that with massive fame comes a massive desire for a paycheck to match. And this is where the perfect illusion of Three's Company began to publicly unravel. Behind the scenes, a conflict was brewing that would become one of Hollywood's most infamous contract disputes. It was the real-life drama that fans never saw, the scene that would change everything. At the start of the 5th season, Suzanne Somers, advised by her husband and manager Alan Hamill, decided it was time for a raise. A big one. She was earning $30,000 per episode, a huge sum at the time, but it was a fraction of what other male stars on less popular shows were making. More importantly, It was 5 times less than what her co-star John Ritter was about to be paid. Ritter, who was seen as the central star, had been given a new contract worth $150,000 an episode. Summers felt that as an equal part of the show's successful trio, she deserved the same. She didn't just ask for a raise. She demanded pay parity with Ritter, plus 10% of the show's profits. To put it mildly, the network, ABC, and the show's producers were stunned. In the 1980s, a demand like this from a female television actor was practically unheard of. They saw it not as a request for fairness, but as a sign of greed. From their perspective, John Ritter was the star, and Summers was replaceable. Negotiations turned ugly, fast. The producers refused to budge, and instead of finding a compromise, they decided to play hardball. They began to systematically punish Summers for her demands. This is where the on-screen product started to reflect the off-screen toxicity. What many overlooked was the sheer awkwardness of how they handled it. Since Summers was still under contract, they couldn't fire her immediately. Instead, they isolated her. Her character, Chrissy, was written out of group scenes. Instead of interacting with Jack and Janet in their apartment, Chrissy would appear in short, 60-second segments at the end of each episode, usually on the phone from her mother's house. She was literally phoning in her performance. The most shocking fact is that these scenes were filmed on a separate, isolated set, away from the rest of the cast. Summers had no contact with Ritter or DeWitt during this time, creating a rift that felt both personal and professional. The on-screen chemistry that had made the show a hit was now completely gone, replaced by a bizarre and disjointed feeling. The cast was broken. When her contract was finally up at the end of the season, Suzanne Summers was officially fired from Three's company. The media had a field day, often painting Summers as greedy and difficult. The dream trio was over, and the show was left with a massive hole to fill. This behind-the-scenes showdown was the real scene that sealed the show's fate. The show must go on. With Suzanne Summers gone, the producers of Three's company were faced with an impossible task. How do you replace a television icon? Their solution was to try and recreate the magic, but as many people quickly found out, lightning doesn't strike twice. The departure of Chrissy Snow left a void that was immediately felt by the show's millions of fans. The perfect comedic triangle of the clumsy man, the smart woman, and the naive woman was broken. The show, once an unstoppable ratings machine, had a serious problem on its hands, and their attempts to fix it only highlighted what they had lost. Their first attempt to fill the void was the introduction of Chrissy's cousin, Cindy Snow, played by Jenna Lee Harrison. Cindy was designed to be clumsy and naive, a sort of Chrissy 2.0. You see, the writers tried to replicate the formula, hoping audiences wouldn't notice the difference. But they did. While Harrison was a capable comedic actress, the character of Cindy never quite connected with viewers in the same way. The chemistry felt forced, and the slapstick antics that seemed so natural with the original cast now felt a bit stale. The magic just wasn't there. Recognizing this, the producers changed course again for the next season. They brought in actress Priscilla Barnes to play Terry Alden, a smart, sophisticated nurse. The idea was to move away from the ditzy blonde trope and create a new dynamic. Terry was more of a peer to Janet, a fellow sensible woman who could react to Jack's crazy schemes. Barnes was a strong actress, and Terry was a solid character, but by this point, the core of the show had been permanently altered. What many overlooked is that the show was no longer about 3 mismatched young people finding their way. It had become the Jack Tripper Show, with 2 rotating female roommates as his sidekicks. The ratings, while still respectable, began a slow but steady decline from their once untouchable peak. Meanwhile, the off-screen drama continued to cast a long shadow. The firing of Suzanne Summers had created a deep and lasting rift between her and her former co-stars. The most shocking fact is that Joyce DeWitt and Suzanne Summers did not speak to each other for over 30 years following the dispute. The hurt and betrayal ran deep, with DeWitt later saying she felt the original family had been broken apart by business. The public fallout was immense, and the story became a cautionary tale in Hollywood about the price of demanding more. The show also faced new competition. As the 1980s roared on, flashy new shows like The A-Team started to steal viewers. The simple, apartment-based humor of Three's Company began to look dated next to action-packed, high-concept television. The show was still on the air, but the laughter felt a little less hearty. What happened to Jack? By 1984, after 8 seasons on the air, the writing was on the wall for Three's Company. The creative energy that once made the show a phenomenon was fading, and the sitcom that had dominated late 70s television was now just coasting on its legacy. Cast changes, behind-the-scenes feuds, and creative exhaustion had all taken their toll. Even the greatest shows have a lifespan, and Three's Company had reached the end of its own. The network knew it, the producers knew it, and somewhere deep down, the audience felt it too. But when the final season arrived, nobody was prepared for how strange and unsatisfying its ending would be. The last episode, Friends and Lovers, tried to tie together years of storylines in a single 22-minute blur. Jack Tripper, who had spent nearly a decade chasing romance in every form imaginable, suddenly met his perfect match, an airline stewardess named Vicky Bradford. Out of nowhere, he proposed. Meanwhile, Janet Wood, the dependable one, met a new man, got engaged, and married him all within the same episode. Terry, who had been part of the trio for 3 seasons, barely appeared. Fans were stunned at how quickly everything happened. For a show that had spent years building comedic tension around relationships, this abrupt conclusion felt artificial. It was as if the world of Three's Company was being packed away overnight. Many fans expected a grand farewell, but what they got felt more like a contract being completed. The final scene had no true closure, no heartfelt goodbye, just a sudden fade-out that left viewers uneasy. Yet, for the network, this wasn't the end. John Ritter was a proven star, and they weren't ready to let him go. So, the following week, a new show appeared in the same time slot. Three's a Crowd. It picked up exactly where Three's Company ended, following Jack and Vicky as they moved in together. Vicky's father, a cold and disapproving businessman played by Robert Mandan, owned their building and constantly interfered with their relationship. It was a new dynamic, but one that felt off from the start. Three's a Crowd never captured the magic of its predecessor. The chemistry that made Three's Company sparkle came from the ensemble. The tension, the misunderstandings, the playful chaos. It all depended on the trio. Once that balance was gone, the show lost its charm. Without Janet, without the shared apartment full of mistaken identities and comedic collisions, the world felt smaller. The laugh track felt louder. It wasn't the same rhythm. The spin-off limped through 1 season and was quietly canceled, marking the end of Jack Tripper's long run on television. But over time, fans began to sense that there was more to the story. Some claimed Three's Company didn't simply die of creative fatigue. It was pushed. Rumors circulated that powerful groups had grown tired of the show's suggestive humor and its constant testing of social boundaries. The early 80s were a time of shifting morals on television. Certain organizations had long campaigned against what they called the decay of prime time, and Three's Company was always on their list. Some theorists say that pressure was placed on ABC to end the series quietly, rather than face another public controversy. Others point to strange happenings during the final season. Entire scripts were rewritten overnight. Scenes were cut for reasons no one could explain. Episodes began to take on a surreal, uneven tone. In some tapings, audiences reported the laugh track felt slightly off, as if it didn't match the energy of the actors. A few observant fans later noticed small inconsistencies in the set itself. Furniture that shifted positions between shots, wallpaper patterns that didn't match from episode to episode. Some even claimed to spot background extras who appeared in multiple roles, suggesting scenes had been reshot months apart and pieced together like a puzzle. Then came the whispers about the missing footage. According to one studio employee, a reel from the 8th season vanished before it could be edited. Others talked about a lost episode that was filmed but never broadcast, one that supposedly brought back Chrissy Snow for a surprise scene. The show may be over, but its stars lived on, each with their own story of triumph and tragedy. Was Suzanne Summers a greedy star or a brave pioneer for equal pay? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.